Hi and welcome to today's vlog. I wonder how you're responding to the situation in which we find ourselves, where we've been restricted to our homes, not encouraged to go out very much, although the restrictions are slowly being eased. I wonder if you find that a liberating time to spend time at home, perhaps enjoy or been having the opportunity to do things around the house or in the garden that you've not otherwise had the time to do. You've had time to do some reading perhaps or whatever. For others, it's been a really stressful time when they wanted to be out and about but not able to do so. One of the ways in which the broadcasting industry have responded to people's needs is by releasing some of the older TV programs that we perhaps used to watch and enjoy in days gone by, and now available on catch-up TV. Sue and I have recently been rewatching the Jonathan Creek series, which we quite enjoy as a bit of light entertainment. And of course, these programs were made 20 or more years ago, and occasionally an actor or an actress appears on the program, and I kind of wonder to myself, what's happening? What are they doing now? What have they been doing over the years? And so I looked them up, and well, in my childhood days, my growing up days, if I wanted a piece of information, I didn't have access to it. I didn't have the books that would tell me. Because I lived outside Hull, I could ring up a great service based at the Central Library in Hull. It was called the Hull City Information Service. So if I wanted to know a piece of information, I could ring this number at the library, and somebody at the other end would take my question or my piece of information that I wanted. They would go and look it up and either tell me the answer there and then if they could find it, or would ring me back. That was a great service. Of course, we don't need such a service these days, do we? Because we've got Mr. Google, or is it Mrs. Google? I'm not quite sure. We've got Wikipedia. On one of the episodes of Jonathan Creek recently, there was a particular actress who I remembered from days gone by, and I'd not heard about her at all recently. So I looked it up on Google and found a page about her that gave me information about her life and what she's been in more recent years. And there was a headline that clicked up on Google to tell me that she'd been involved in some spat with another actress who apparently they're both appearing currently in a particular soap opera on the TV, one which I don't watch. In fact, we don't watch any soap operas, I don't think. Not since Ina Sharples disappeared from Coronation Street and Annie Sugden disappeared from Emmerdale Farm. But anyway, that's another story. So, excuse me, this particular actress had been involved in a spat with another actress, and the second actress had apparently tweeted about the first actress, "You are actual trash. You are actual trash." And I wonder, what kind of society is it that we somehow that is okay to say of another human being, "You are actual trash"? Whatever we may think of that person, surely that's not an appropriate thing to say. And yet we see that attitude over and over again in history. We can think of the awful episode with George Floyd in America and how he was killed by that police officer as other police officers stood around. And it's clear that to those police officers, George Floyd was, they might say, trash, rubbish, of no value. And time and again, we've seen that. No wonder that the Black Lives Matter protests have been so strongly supported. But it's not just Black Lives, is it? I was watching recently an online service from Holy Trinity Brompton, and Nicky Gumbel, who's the church leader there, was saying how his father was a German Jew who had to flee to this country to escape persecution of the Jewish people. And that Nazi regime had the attitude, Jewish people are trash, they're of no value. Indeed, they are so much of no value that they can just be destroyed, incinerated, killed. And that attitude permeates history, sadly enough, and still today. We look on people who are different and we say, may not verbally, but we may think it, that person has no value, that person is trash. And yet the Bible tells us that every human being is made in the image of God. This wasn't picked up on the news recently or this week, but Parliament passed a bill which will inevitably lead to many lives being violently ended. What's that about? There was a clause in a bill that was passed this week that would bring about in Northern Ireland about the most liberal abortion laws around. I haven't got time to go into the detail of that. You could look it up. But it's estimated that because Northern Ireland was not part of the 1967 Abortion Act, around 100,000 people are alive today in Northern Ireland who otherwise their lives would have been ended. Around 9 million babies or embryos have been taken, their lives have been taken, ended, since the 1967 Abortion Act. Who knows what those lives could have become? Someone finding a cure for cancer, perhaps. Who knows what those lives would have developed into. I want to read you some verses from Psalm 139. This is the psalmist speaking to God. You created every part of me. You put me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because you are to be feared. All you do is strange and wonderful. I know it with all my heart. When my bones were being formed, carefully put together in my mother's womb, when I was growing there in secret, you knew that I was there. You saw me before I was born. The days allotted to me had all been recorded in your book before any of them ever began. So it's expressing God's intimate knowledge of every human being, even before the date of our birth. God knows us and watches over us. Every life special. We've all heard of the Black Lives Matter campaign and protests, and most, if not all of us, would want to share in that protest in some way. We believe in justice for all people, but every life matters. There's a campaign that's been going on for some time called Both Lives Matter, because often the rights of the pregnant woman are stressed, quite rightly too. They need to be supported and loved. But what about the rights of the unborn child? Some people would say that the woman's right comes first. But what about the rights of the unborn woman in the womb? Now, I know this is a very sensitive issue, and I don't claim to have full understanding, but all I want to say is that every human life is precious in God's sight. If you look to the Gospels, you can see that time, that society was a time, perhaps in some ways not unlike our own, where certain elements in society were looked down upon, were regarded of no value. And yet Jesus went out of his way to welcome, to receive, to embrace with his love and compassion those who were outcast in society. The tax collectors, the prostitutes, the lepers, the sinful people. And yet the religious leaders criticised him, called him a friend of sinners, not as a a good thing, but a criticism, because why does Jesus sit down and eat with tax collectors and sinners? Why does he associate with such people? Why? Because Jesus knew the Father's heart is to love every human being. So I'm so sad that sometimes in society we look on another person and say, you are trash. That is totally against what God is saying. God says every life is precious. And I pray that I may live that out in my life, and that more and more that may be seen in the church and in society. Every life is precious. Every life, says the Bible, made in some way in the image of God. May we as a society learn to value and treasure every human life. Thank you for listening.